Hey everyone, thank you all for attending our webinar today. My name is Natalie Musa and I'm going to go over a few housekeeping items. The webinar itself will be no longer than 25 minutes with 15 minutes at the end to answer any questions that you may have. If you have a question during the presentation, please type it in the questions box and we will be sure to answer them during the Q&A period at the end of the presentation. Anoop Futre and Dave Williams will be presenting today. Anoop is the Business Process Management Leader and Dave Williams is the Managing Consultant for Pactera. I hope you all enjoy the webinar, and now I'm going to turn it over to Anoop.
Thanks, Natalie. And again, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to give a very brief overview of who Pactera is and what we focus on, and then turn it over to Dave for the webinar. So as Natalie mentioned, my name is Anoop Putre, and I'm the Business Process Management Solution Area for Pactera. We're a global technology and business and technology consulting and outsourcing firm. We have 23,000 employees around the world, spread over 35 locations in Asia Pacific, North America, Europe, and Latin America, as well as Australia. Today's webinar is going to focus on an objective approach to project prioritization. This is a methodology that we've used in many industries, and we hope that you find the material useful to solving some of your business problems. With that, I'll turn it over to David.
Thank you, Anoop. I appreciate the opportunity to present our webinar today. Yes, the title, Solving the Right Problems. It's going to be a bit of an exploration into our business driver perspective. In the various client environments that we work in, we see business leaders desire a greater peace of mind across their organization. Three common challenges that we hear, the clients face every day really, kind of focus on, three pain points, and it's one, it's like, why do we have a problem with transparency? Why is transparency such an issue? Why can't I see through to my organization? Secondly, variable at best and just indefensible business cases in supporting, decisions and investments. And lastly, verification to the plan, trust but verify. Why is it that what I plan for us to do isn't exactly what we perform to? Today's webinar is going to focus on these, three pain points and how our approach kind of provides some kind of help and support to executives who, they have their day job and the challenges they're trying to face, how to provide solutions that really drive the needle forward. So we talk about peace of mind, and first we begin with transparency, and that's transparency, throughout the enterprise, starting at the portfolio management level, through to project delivery and daily operations. When we think about a strategic aspirations or a plan, very high-level things, we see significant variance between what those strategies and plans are and the actual performance that's realized and achieved. The number one pain point, why are things not going to the plan? There's various symptoms that are all around us, and we see them in these engagements. One being, multiple strategies and plans, even ones that are competing with each other. The infamous telephone game. I'll ask an executive, are your leadership aligned on the strategy? Oh, yes, absolutely. Everybody is on the same page. And, I go have those individual conversations with the leaders, and you get, varying different answers. And then obviously every business goes through leadership changes. So, with these various symptoms, executives know there's just a consistent challenge to how do we keep alignment to what the strategic plan is. So the benefits, let's get to the point. I mean, what benefits can executives, gain from this business driver approach? First and foremost, insights into these gaps and misalignments. Nothing's worse than what you don't know, and being able to show, where leadership gaps exist, where there's misalignments, the ability to provide leaders and executives with each other's perspectives, the ability to share, everybody's perspectives at the table, ultimately promotes team building. So this slide really serves as kind of an overview of what we're going to present in today's webinar, is really how to leverage business drivers to align leadership to your strategy and to the plan. So I've talked about a business driver. Well, what exactly is a business driver? A business driver is what structures leadership thinking around a common perspective. What this slide presents is just an illustrative list of 12 typical sample business drivers grouped by, into three kind of key areas that are very generic as far as how an organization thinks about their future and how they develop their strategic vision and aspirations. These business drivers, really, their intent is to holistically represent the enterprise in the various perspectives and ways that the enterprise needs to think about their customers and also just their internal operations. But more importantly, these business drivers, they represent a definition. And the intent is that you want your leadership, you want your people to have the same definition, be on the same page of what every single business driver means. Because bottom line, we see this too often. Strategy, it can be it's broad, but it can be very overwhelming. And every organization has their own definition of what strategy means. So the use of business drivers, we want to show how you can make strategy more meaningful and also be able to show how you can thoroughly implement it through your organization. So again, business drivers, we talk about transparency. Well, transparency begins with clarity. And really, what business drivers provide is clarity in demonstrating what exactly the organization's priorities, where is the organization going, what is important. The graphic to the left is an example of 12 given business drivers and their weightings. So what business drivers allow you to do is effectively visualize priorities and the relative importance. This really serves as a tool to communicate throughout not only your leadership, but even further into your organization to combat and reduce noise and distractions. The questions that we'll raise with the executives and leadership will be showing the business drivers, we'll be showing their weightings to them and say, does anybody find it interesting what the top 3 business drivers are? Right there is potentially 30 minutes, 60 minutes of conversation. And more importantly, what are the bottom 3 business drivers? When you put a visual representation to something that's typically in narrative format or just not written down at all, it really creates quite a lot of thinking, and from there is where insights and decisions really truly can be made. So business drivers aren't just something that we throw around and say, okay, you use it once and that's it. No, we tend to think of them as a sustainable tool for leadership to not only address their organization in the start, but also moving forward. This is an example of the basic tool we use, which is a scoring matrix, where you have 12 business drivers along the rows, and you have the same 12 business drivers along as columns. So what we'll do with leadership a lot of times is say, okay, well, let's go through and weight these. Let's go score these various business drivers to each other. So we'll take business driver row 1 and say how much more important, equal to, or less important is business driver row 1 to business driver column 2. And basically, we'll facilitate leadership in scoring these various things. And then we'll collect all the various, scoring matrices, and then we'll basically identify, okay, where did this collective group agree, disagree, where was there significant misalignment, and where was there just slight, or minor misalignment. So the workshops that we drive and find a lot of value in is when you bring the executive, you bring his leadership into the room and say, okay, this is what your people just said. Here's where their misalignments exist on these business drivers. Here's where there's potential value. More importantly, there's some meaningful discussion and debate that has to occur. It really comes down to if you're able to confront the uncomfortable truths, you're able to really gain a significant amount of business insights into the what is going right, what's going wrong, why are we doing things, and how do we need to do things moving forward. I'm going to shift gears here, and now we're going to focus on really the second pain point. And that's really around, peace of mind through objective decision making. Too often, most organizations that we work in, objectivity is not as common as subjectivity. Leadership will make decisions with whatever information they have available to them, and more often than not, they don't have a lot of great objective information. It's subjective, and so the intent of business drivers in a lot of this approach is to infuse more objective data, more objective processes and approaches to improve decision making. Now let's jump to a common question that we'll see. Executives and leadership will ask, why again? Why again should this project be funded? Why should I be purchasing this system or this process or bringing in an additional group of resources? And a lot of times there's not a lot of great objective data behind it. The symptoms, you'll see them every day. Lots of ideas. Everybody's got lots of ideas. There's lots of projects, lots of pet projects. Lots of tools, lots of processes, lots of various things. But you're not really quite sure. Okay, what are the must-dos, the need-to-dos, the like-to-dos of all these ideas? Secondly, environments where intense political agendas inherently tend to have a lot more subjectivity and less objectivity in the decision process. And then overall, where you witness lack of business cases, lack of clear understanding of the business priorities, these are good symptoms. The benefits, what are we really after? Again, our approach is about gaining a single enterprise perspective. We want to be the ability to have a bucketed approach to decisions, to reduce noise. I say bucketed, I mean I want to be able to know what are the must-dos, the need-to-dos, the like-to-dos. I want to bucket things into 3 easy segments. The ability to reduce noise provides the ability to reinvest into what's important. So again, today, this webinar, the next few slides I'm going to drive into is how to focus energy and investment into the right activities. So I've just finished conducting an executive workshop with his leaders. It was about 3-4 hours long. We debated and discussed all the business drivers, the misalignments, and we were typing and collecting a lot of insights. This is an example of about 500 issues that came out of various client engagement, various discussions and engagement workshop. And just through, some objective categorization and basic prioritization, we were able to, effectively rank them from left being kind of more important priority to all the way to the right. It's amazing when you collect these many insights, you start to find out there's quite a lot of noise. There's quite a lot of low-value activities. And when you look at this, and again, the bucketed approach, this is common. We'll see must-do activities, half of them, are quick wins. Half of them are things that we can do this now and get immediate value. Half of them are new projects. They're substantial investments. And the need to do work, there might be a few quick wins, but more or less you see a lot more new substantial projects or activities or efforts. And then the like-to-do activities, more often than not, they're substantial and they require a lot of investment and resources, hence they create a lot of noise. So the intent or purpose of this slide, and it usually looks the same way everywhere we go, is, how do we go about reducing the focus on non-value activities? And, there's a number of options for companies out there. You can just stop doing them. You can also divest it, and obviously, you can look for opportunities to outsource certain non-value, non-critical activities so that you can reinvest your resources on that top 20%. Famous Pareto principle. If all the value's in the top 20%, that's where our people, that's where our money, that's where our effort should be spent. Now, the problem with objectivity is people can make it very complicated very quickly. This is a very detailed slide, but it's an illustrative example of effectively a basic objective decision model where, again, on the right side, you see the result. I want to be able to see my must-do, my need-to-do, my like-to-do bucketed issues, activities, assets, projects, people, whatever. All the way on the left, you have your registry. Here's your lists of issues, your lists of assets. And in the middle, it's our business drivers. It's also quantifiable factors such as customer satisfaction. You got quantifiable factors, it's ROI. By the ability to just bring in all this information and do it in a very common Excel, at the very least, Excel worksheet, you're able to create a sustainable model, one that, you put in all the additional issues, assets when they're identified. If leadership decides on a 3-year basis they want to tweak the business drivers or the factors of influence, not a problem. You push resort, the issues move into the must-do, need-to-do, and like-to-do buckets. But the message I really want to leave you with this slide is, if an issue, an asset, if something ends up in the must-do bucket, don't put too much focus on it. Just make sure it goes and gets done. If it falls into the like-to-do bucket, if it's already underway, it might need to be stopped, or it might need to be divested, outsourced, but at the very least, less focus, less resources. If it falls in the need-to-do bucket, there is where leadership, there's where executives have the opportunity to maybe invest a bit more time in thinking, okay, is this truly a critical activity for us to advance our business, or is this something that we need to figure out a way to reduce resources, reduce investment into? So I'm going to change gears one more time. We're going to our last pain point. And again, we're, in providing peace of mind. Everything that we're talking about today is providing peace of mind to executives. How do I sustain this? How do I sustain a culture of accountable performance? The last pain point is really one of the more important ones is executives and leadership will ask, why do we have areas lacking accountability? We see these symptoms. If you're lacking processes, or you have a lot of processes but no one's using them, or limited accountability. If you don't have ways to measure, you can't account for, you can't adjust. If you don't have any metrics, or the metrics aren't meaningful, or they're focused on the wrong things, these are clear symptoms of a problem being able to sustain accountable performance. But the benefits of our approach are quite clear. The intent is to establish clear guidance. We want strategy to be clear. We want the tactical plans that come out of it to be clear. We want the roles and responsibilities to be defined and clear. But more importantly, we want executives and leadership to be able to tie the data, the KPIs, to those strategies so they can realize and understand, is my strategy performing to plan? Do I need to adjust? What we like to refer to this as, how do I bridge my strategy to the performance? If you like colorful slides, you'll love this one, and this is definitely very detailed. But this is one slide that we try to explain this detail of how do you bridge strategy to performance. And we really believe that one of the most important things you can do is have a solid, strong enterprise process framework. We consider processes to be the glue holding together strategy and performance. You know, executives, if executives haven't set clear strategy, they can't expect to have transparency through their organizations. More importantly, leadership. Leadership must be able to make the right decisions based on the strategic plan and also the ability to manage their resources, but also to define those clear roles and responsibilities. And lastly, delivery, it's all about being able to measure. How are the KPIs enabling us to account for what was accomplished? But right in the middle of this diamond is Enterprise Business Process Framework. We believe that sustaining these types of solutions, you have solid processes, solid process frameworks, that's the glue that you can attach everything else to. The strategy, the business drivers can trace right through the trace right through the processes, and effectively you can attach all the KPIs and surrounding data, also the processes going back up the diamond. That's of this webinar today. These are the slides that we kind of wanted to present, kind of explain the approach. And the next couple slides, we want to say, well, all right, let's show you real world examples. Here's a couple case studies. We had a 6-week strategic growth plan engagement with a Fortune 500 energy company. They had a pretty clear need. They needed to define and validate their strategic direction, but at the end of the day, they needed to have a tangible business growth plan deliverable. So the first step, as you can see, there's 2 horizontal rows here, but the first step we provide is executing an executive strategic direction workshop. Very simple and straightforward, validating, ensuring that they had a mission and vision statement. So again, let's clarify, what is your strategy? What are your ideas and thoughts, Mr. or Mrs. Executive? Let's go ahead and define some business drivers that match to that. And then let's go ahead and take your initial baseline driver weightings. Before we go talk to your people, we sat with the executives and said, well, let's define what those strategic inputs are. That allowed us to define the initial business driver scoring, where you see the illustrative chart. From there, we took that into the leadership discussion workshop, where we met with 10 of their leadership and said, all right, here's some business drivers. This visualizes the importance of the various directives your leaders are given. What do you think of that? 3-4 more hours of disagreement, debate, discussion, tons of opportunities, insights, lots of collected issues and values. For this particular engagement, we used the business driver exercise to collect as much information around what this company, what this group does, day in and day out, what they believe their value proposition is, what they believe their competitive advantage is. Because again, at the end of the day, the intent was they wanted a growth plan coming out of it. So I'll jump to the bottom half of this presentation, where we then began focus on, okay, well, let's build your business growth plan. We've done all this research. We've done all this discovery. We've built you a set of business drivers that maps and shows what you believe is important. That allowed us to effectively begin working with them to define their service offerings. And they had effectively 5 layers of it. They had what they called their core services. They had their adjacent business services, emerging, and innovative. And this is a group that developed new service offerings every year. And they counted on a lot of their new service offerings to depend upon for the growth for the future. So what we took were these potential service offerings. So well, let's go ahead and slot them across, a common tool that's used, which are business horizons. And so we have 4 columns in a chart. And so well, let's take every single opportunity, every single client, every single service offering that you would potentially sell to that client, and let's put them into these various horizontal columns. So horizon 1, we had a number of activities. Horizon 2, we had a number of activities, again being opportunities to sell service A to client X, and so forth and so forth. Bottom line, what we were able to take in developing their business growth plan was bucketing. We went and said, all right, here's all your opportunities. Now let's go about prioritizing them. Let's put them into the must-do opportunities. Let's put them in the need-to-do and the like-to-do. So coming out of this whole effort, the business drivers allowed us to identify all the potential opportunities, client sales opportunities, anything, and then allowed us to bucket them by core, adjacency, emerging, and future, but also bucket by what's the must-do, what's the need-to-do, like-to-do. And that allowed that organization to effectively focus on the must-do activities across all horizons and then move to some of the need-to-do activities. And a lot of the like-to-dos either fell off the plate or were, just completely removed altogether. So this is a typical 6-week engagement to take strategic aspirations and direction, collect your business, your leadership's thoughts and ideas, and put it together into a growth plan that says, here's where we're going to target client investment, client business, and here's where we're not going to invest our time and resources to grow our business. I have a second case study to present, and you'll notice the top horizon looks almost the same, but this case study was also another Fortune 500 energy firm where they had a much broader need for continuous improvement, for operational excellence. So they had an operational excellence initiative underway with about 15 to 20 subject matter experts, led by a team of about 5 executives, 5 executive leadership. So again, we met with those executive leadership, collected, defined their business drivers, established what they thought was the baseline driver weightings, reviewed that baseline driver weightings chart with them to kind of say, okay, do the top 3 look right? Do the bottom 3 look right? What are you getting from this? And then we expanded it out to the rest of the 20 subject matter experts to collect all their thoughts and ideas. And as you can imagine, this took a little bit more time. It was more like 2 to 3 weeks of workshops, discussions, additional follow-up effort to validate ideas, issues. But during this engagement, there was a second, or actually the primary project going on, which was establishing a process framework. So while the business driver work was going on to identify opportunities and issues, in parallel, we were helping them define their enterprise business process framework. So what we were able to do was take every issue, every opportunity, every pain point, and assign it to the various process boxes where the pains existed, or where those opportunities sat. That allowed us to take also the business drivers and assign to the various processes. So what we were able to do was now the bottom middle chart you see is a list of prioritized issues. We were able to prioritize the issues not by just a natural priority of importance, but also bring in the business driver weightings according to the process boxes that was the glue, the process boxes where everything was assigned. So this chart looks a bit bigger, and obviously it had a lot more issues and opportunities to go through and work through. So the results of this engagement, and this is more about a 3-month engagement. The client was able to realize an enterprise process framework that continues today as far as defining the process activities of what they do and who does what. There was a multitude of immediate quick wins that were initiated and closed out as part of just delivering this engagement. And more importantly, all the issues, all the insights, all the opportunities were collected and framed underneath a long-term plan outlining the business improvement initiatives. So this is a much larger engagement example. The prior case study was something a little bit shorter, but one of the principles that we follow, or as part of our approach, we know the client has all the answers in the organization. The problem is those ideas, those answers, those problems have to be pulled out. They have to be pulled out, put on the paper, but given some objective reasoning, given some objective prioritization. It's when you're able to put meaningful, objective, solid supporting data to executive and leadership insights and thoughts, you can focus on what's valuable, stop focusing on the non-value noise that may exist, and ultimately, begin to sustain a culture that focuses on accountable performance. I appreciate everyone's time today, and with that, I'll turn it back over to Natalie.
Thank you, Dave. We have a few questions that have come in. If you have any questions, please type them into the questions box, and we will try to answer them for you. But, Dave, I'm just going to go through some of the questions that we've got so far. The first question, what have been the barriers to overcome while implementing business drivers on your past client engagements?
There are a few barriers, and every project faces some of these barriers, but they are something that has to be addressed kind of early on. First and foremost is you really have to have an executive sponsor. Without an executive that has some aspiration, some goal, either they want their strategies, their business drivers to be clarified, or it may be a lower level group leader who has a list of business objectives and wants the group to begin performing to the tactical business objectives in an improved manner. You have to have that single person that is that sponsor. Secondly, stakeholder availability. If people's schedules aren't made available to have those meaningful discussions and debates in the workshops, you can lose a lot of momentum, and ultimately, if it's easy to do, it's easy not to do. And what we try to stress and impress upon executives and leadership is that this will be meaningful. This will move the dial. Give us the 3-4 hours. You'll be surprised what comes out of that workshop. Another barrier that we face to a lesser extent is just significant leadership change. Organizations that are undergoing leadership change, organizational charts are all over the place. They're not always the best environments because everybody likes to, I don't want to say necessarily use the excuse, but essentially say, well, we can't get the right people in the room because people are changing. The ideas and the issues aren't changing. They're still out there. People's roles may change, but if you get the ideas and issues, it's still valuable effort. So it is a bit of a barrier to explain that. And then obviously political agendas. When you remove subjectivity and politics from the business environment in an attempt to replace it with objectivity, you're altering the power structure. And so that's something you have to be careful of. You have to show executives and leaders how that the business drivers, objective business drivers, can be useful within the current power structure.
All right, thanks, Dave. Here's another question that has come through. How do businesses deal with today's objective versus planning for the future? Do they dedicate resources?
You know, we see some organizations attempt to, you know, it depends. Folks will try to have a top-down approach. They'll try to use bottoms-up approach as well in assigning resources and investment. There's always going to be a balance of objectivity and subjectivity in the variables associated with potential projects or investments or resources. Bottom line, when it comes down to it, and we tell clients, is that if it's not written down, if it's not scripted, written down, formalized, it doesn't exist. If a plan, whether it's subjective or objective, is just in the minds of people or in the emails, it's susceptible to the telephone game. It's susceptible to just people misremembering or altering the purpose or intent. So what we try to stress is that we like to leverage written down frameworks, process frameworks, lists of issues, lists of business drivers to represent the institutional knowledge that people try to gain or gather when setting the path forward.
Hey, Dave, I'm just going to add one thing here. If you could elaborate a little bit on planning horizons as it relates to that question. So specifically, how do you prioritize today's priorities versus tomorrow's priorities?
Great point. I did move the webinar back to page 12. Planning horizons in and to themselves could have their own webinar. It's a tool that we've used, adopted from other consulting best practices. People will say you never want to cannibalize your future, but focusing purely just on what's current at bay. You know, some energy companies we've worked in, they'll say, well, anything that's a compliance issue has to be addressed, absolutely has to be addressed. Future innovation projects come last. It's just not how things can work. Planning horizons, the real intent or purpose of them is to show that, okay, you have your current focus, you have tomorrow's focus, and you have the focus of the years out. But you have to, and while those are vertical silos, you have to begin taking horizontal slivers of and this is where we use the bucketing approach of must do, need to do, like to do, to ensure that you have a balanced focus of investment on today's core activities, tomorrow's adjacencies, and so forth into the future.
Okay, thanks guys for answering that. We have one last question here. How does this approach align with the primary Pactera outsourcing model?
As business process consultants, one of our primary focuses is help providing some clarity for executives. And okay, by throwing boxes on a piece of paper, it's amazing the value that can be shown. The ability to put on a wall, you know, 100 boxes that represent all the silos of the organization, all the activities that organization accomplishes. We like to take business drivers and take the strategic importance, the clarity of those business drivers, and apply them down through the various process boxes. If you think of it as like a color coding scheme, if a process is critical, an absolute critical to the business in driving in enabling the business drivers, it's going to be colored green. If a particular process is not exactly critical to the business and it's not a part of the inherent value proposition of the business, it may be colored red, something that's not a part of the core. After you do that across all the activities, you're going to have a mix of greens and light reds and dark reds. In organizations, from the Pactera business model, what we like to impress upon is focus your resources on what makes you tick. Focus your resources on the important processes, the things that drive your business. If it's not critical to driving your business, but it is important as part of just ensuring the business operates, those are processes. Those red boxes are great processes as far as an opportunity for outsourcing or divestiture. But you know, you either want to stop focusing your investments on it, or you want to get somebody else, a partner, to come in and help drive that back office, so those activities are not critical to the face of the company.
Thanks, Dave. We actually have one more question that has come through. What other activities are involved in a full-scale business driver engagement, and how long does that typically take?
We like a general rule of thumb, because we like to impress upon clients. Business driver engagements aren't something that are going to take, months and years of work. We want to be able to show value quickly and effectively. An exercise can be as little as 1 week. It can be something quick. We come in, we identify, the key drivers, the key processes, issues. It doesn't take a lot of time to find out quickly, the Pareto principle. Look for the 80% of the value and 20% of the processes. So from a level of effort standpoint, it can be very quick and efficient. At the same time, anytime we're working on business transformation initiatives where we're changing how an organization's business processes are laid out, to ensure that we're aligned with strategic aspirations, we drop in a business driver activities to ensure that everything's tied together. So a lot of our more 6 to 8 or 1 year long engagements where we're doing business process re-engineering or optimization, we'll put business driver activities on top of that just to make sure that everything's aligned. Because again, the intent of processes, the way we look at process diagrams, it's the glue that connects those strategic aspirations to the actual realized performance in the way of KPIs.
Okay, thank you so much, Dave and Anoop, for presenting today. That will conclude our question and answer session. Thank you all for attending our webinar today, and if you have any additional questions, we will be following up with all of you that attended later this afternoon, and Anoop and Dave's email address will be on there if you would like to ask them any further questions. Thank you so much. Have a great day.